I thought I was having the magical experience. Good morning. I'm Kathianne Lewis here at the Center for Spiritual Living, and we have lights. Praise God. Although it did look, if you came in through those doors, you noticed the wind had a party last night outside. Hey, yeah. Let's see what we can beat up. Well, I don't know the wind was really thinking that, but anyway. You make things up as you go along. So I was just really getting into our theme for this month, well, for the next few Sundays, which is basic ideas of the science of mind, and it's really the science of mind and spirit. Basic ideas, how to use our mind, how to connect with spirit. And what I realized is that we are a place where we learn to use universal intelligence intelligently, because it is always being used, but sometimes it's not so intelligent, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on.
My way, and out of the darkness I began to pray. I said, God, what can I do? Then I listened to the voice that came through. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith to see you through. Celebrate me, I'll celebrate. Celebrate you. I got off of my knees and I opened the door to let the sun in. I hadn't noticed before. This light I see, the song I hear, a beautiful melody, rhythm and harmony. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith to see you through. Celebrate me, I'll celebrate. Celebrate you. It's all in your heart, it's all in your mind. Don't give up on hope, just give it more time. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith
Okay, that wasn't my grandma's church. Or my grandpa's synagogue, for that matter. No, I didn't really have a grandpa that went to a synagogue, but I always felt my spiritual ancestry was very Middle Eastern, though. Let's just talk. Lots to talk about today, but before I begin, to set us up really so well for what needs to be said today about how to use the law in an easy way, I want to introduce to you Alessandra Duke.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Yeah, it's so good to be here in front of you today. I said this earlier with first service that one of the things that I've been envisioning and dreaming about for myself is actually being on stage in front of you all. So I envisioned it long enough that here I am. So thank you. Yeah, so manifestation number one. I wanted to be able to talk to you today about manifesting things pretty quickly in your life that you want. But in particular, I want to talk about the trip to Portugal that I got to take. Did some of you hear about the spiritual journey to Portugal? Yes. And I knew that there was something inside of me that needed to have this experience. That there was something at a very, very core soul level that needed this. And at the same time, I had all of those internal doubts like, no, you can't. You don't have the money. And I didn't. I didn't have a savings. I didn't have anything. I've got all the student loan debt. Who are you to be thinking about taking a trip? Well, you're ridiculous. Then I've got whose voices? I don't know who. Maybe my mom. Maybe my stepdad. I don't know who it was. No, you can't do that. That's a waste of money. I can't even believe you're thinking that. But I couldn't quit the voice. And at the beginning of the year, I went to a workshop held by Kathianne where she talked about finances and talked about people's problems with money. And I thought, oh, I've got a lot of problems with money. She doesn't even have any idea. And she said, it's not a problem with money unless it's stopping you or limiting you from living different aspects of your life, right? And I thought, oh, I got a real serious problem with money. Yeah. So then I started thinking, I really want to go to this Portugal thing. So I took one step and I signed up, having no idea how I would get there. And everything in my logical mind said, you're ridiculous, right? And I didn't know how I would do it because I was already strapped for cash. I was living paycheck to paycheck, no savings, all of this. But I needed it so badly. So I signed up. I asked them if I could make payments. And slowly, I just kept envisioning myself in Portugal. I just kept doing it. And all of a sudden, this flow, what Kathianne calls a download of ideas came to me. So I thought, well, people raise money when they're making a CD. How about I raise money for being a better person in the world if I go on a spiritual journey? And I had $700 overnight. Whoa. Then I had a ring, and because I was looking around thinking, is there anything I can sell? Do I have anything? Not really. But I found this ring that I had bought, and I thought, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get it appraised, and I'll sell it on eBay. So I bring it to the jeweler. They look, and they say, oh, honey, that's a fake. It's not worth anything. How much did you pay for it? And my heart broke, like $950. And he said, oh, yeah, you're in a tough spot. So I wrote the nice people who sold me this fake ring a lovely letter about Texas state law and how you really shouldn't sell things that are not real, and all of my many plans to do and to take care of this. And they refunded me the money. Please go away. Yes. So $1,000 more came. And then at the same job, I did not switch jobs. I did not do anything. But suddenly, my vision was so clear. The opportunities just came and came and came. Would you do this talk? Would you do this talk? $200 each time. And I just kept getting more money to pay. And the closer I got, the more fearful I became, right? This is coming real. I was going to Portugal. And I was. And I needed it. And when I was there in Portugal and with some of the wonderful people that I see here today, That was exactly the very thing that my soul needed. And even as we were traveling through some of the caves there, some of the darker spaces where I couldn't see and I actually felt fearful, I would just think, Spirit has got me. God has got me, and God is not scary. And I'm going to keep taking these steps toward in the dark, not knowing how I'm going to get there. But that's not up for me to figure out the logistics. That's for Spirit. So handing it over, putting those thoughts, all those I can't, into a more positive I can, and envisioning yourself there, and you've got it. Yeah? Thank you.
Well, that's absolutely the... Actually, now that I've got this on, I realized what was happening was a little off, but that's okay. I'm already got it off, and I figured out. It's not that, it was that kind of coming out. Hello. That's actually a great story for what I want to talk about today. And just to let you know, that workshop that she was in was the 1st of January. She heard about Portugal. And at the end of April, she was in Portugal. So she went from 0 to Portugal in 4 months. And pay attention to her story, because I'm going to ask you to give yourself a Christmas present at the end of this service. To go from 0 to Christmas, whatever that is. Whatever you want in your life in 4 months. Because if one person can do it, we can all do it. We don't listen to these stories and go, well, that worked for her. If I listen to any story, what I say is, oh, that works. Not it works for her, it works. That's why I want spiritual masters like Yogananda and Jesus and Buddha to be my examples. Because if it works for them, it works for me, if I'm willing to let it work through me. That makes sense? So we're going to talk today about what works, and what works is, let's see, what would we call this? We call it intelligence. Remember back to the first of this service? That we want to use universal intelligence intelligently, which means that we use our mind intelligently. And mind is creative, and that's last week's talk. You can get the CD or watch it on our YouTube channel to build up to this. Because what we talked about last week was consciousness, and that we have a conscious mind and we have a very subjective mind, which is all intelligent. And the law, that which moves and creates, works through consciousness. But it's not just our conscious mind. It's the sum total of us. And so everything you heard, and God orchestrated this whole thing, because this is the day that she could talk. And this is the day I'm talking about law. This is just, God is in charge. It's so wonderful. Or some intelligence is in charge. So we're going to talk a little bit about how those things work, because we've all heard about laws, but it's the application of laws that's really important. And they're not as simple and easy as some sources will make them sound. How many of you have heard of the law of attraction? Okay, and then how many of you have visualized something and it still didn't happen? See, if it works, it should always work. But it's that we've left out certain pieces of what works. It's not that it doesn't work, it's just that we don't tell, it's hard to tell the whole story. You have to work with it to become acquainted with the nuances of this thing working through you. But what I want to get to is the real law as I see it, which is the law of cause and effect. How many of you have heard of the law of cause and effect? If you've taken any of our classes, you've heard it. Well, this is a review, or it's to ask you to do more study. I don't care, but this is a quick download of the law of cause and effect as I know it. So that law shows up in every major religion, and I really care more about God than I do anything else. So I study religions, and I study what spiritual masters have taught, and all spiritual masters address the law of cause and effect. Yogananda, in his biography of a yoga, biography of a yogi? Biography, yes. He talks about his first enlightened experience where his guru touched him on the forehead and everything opened up, and he kept expanding into the universe until there was only the law of cause and effect at the very center of the universe. Yogananda was a Hindu, and Hindus definitely teach a lot about this law of cause and effect, and they call it karma. And the way they teach it is that everything you give out will come back to you. And if you do evil, evil will come back to you, and you have to live through that evil. How many of you have done one thing wrong? That you wish you hadn't? Aren't you glad you're not a Hindu? Because the way for that to be remedied is that you experience the same thing yourself. So people spend a lot of time trying to live the perfect life to not only set themselves up for the next life, but to purify what happened in a past life. That's Hinduism, it's the law of cause and effect. In Buddhism, it's a little bit softer, but still the law of cause and effect. Buddha said, you are the result of your past thoughts. So, once again, the law of cause and effect. There, it's not just what you do, karma, it's thoughts. How many of you have ever had a thought that you wish you hadn't put out there? Yeah, aren't you glad that you're not a Buddhist right now? So let's go to something else. In Judaism, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Now, the heart is what I would say is, I'm going to draw a big circle. So now, from now on, I'm up here, and I want you to see me in a big circle, okay? Because I've just become a glyph. And only people who have taken Beyond Limits will probably know what that is, but I am now the glyph. All right, so a glyph. So the heart represents what I was talking about last week, which is the subjective. So there's the conscious mind, what I am conscious that I'm thinking at this moment. Then there's the subjective mind, which is the sum total of everything that I've ever thought, observed, and been influenced by, and perhaps even my ancestors. Whoa. There's a lot going on in my heart. But as a man thinketh, and I'm sure they meant women too, as a man or a woman thinketh in her heart, in her consciousness, that's what's going to be showing up in life. Judaism. Christianity, it's put this way. As you give, so shall you receive. So once again, it's sort of a karmic idea, but it's actually what you initiate is going to come back to you. And in 80s personal growth terminology, what goes around comes around. If you want to be a computer, garbage in, garbage out. It's all the law of cause and effect. So I want to talk about this law, but I want to break it down just a little bit. And what I try to remember before I break it down, what I try to remember is that the law of cause and effect says that consciousness is cause, everything else is effect. So consciousness is cause and effect. What's cause? Consciousness. What's the effect? Everything else. Now, wow, I could really beat myself up with that one. But it's not about beating myself up. It's like for all those people that thought they could fly before airplanes were born, they did see a vision, they just didn't have the aerodynamics right. So yes, this is how things work in the universe, the law works, and when we get better acquainted with how it works, we can work it differently. And so that's what this talks about. I want to break down that cause and effect thing so it's more manageable, so we can see how we are affecting what's out here. So, the first way I will talk about this is something that we've all heard, the law of attraction. Yes, the law of attraction works, but the way that I would define the law of attraction is that the law will bring to us everything that it takes for us to maintain our current circumstances. Does that make sense? The law will attract to us anything that it takes to maintain our current circumstances or our current level of consciousness. So, yes, we can have a thought, I want that car, but in our gut, our subconscious, actually the Eastern people thought we thought here, but in this part of ourself, we can think, I'll never have something like that. And what does it work through? I'll never have something like that. So let me give you an illustration of how clever the law is. The law, it just does. If it had a voice, it would be chuckling all the time. But it doesn't, I don't think. But here's my experience with the law of attraction, because I was really into the law of attraction. So people that do treasure maps and people that do vision boards, that's the law of attraction. You put your picture up and you visualize it and you attract it to you. You can, but it's still having to work through all of you. So one of my first experiences of this was in my, late 20s. And I put together my first treasure map, vision board, whatever you want to call it, and it was gorgeous because I had to make it really pretty, not just a bunch of pictures up there. I looked and looked, and I had them balanced, and it was just a gorgeous collage of possibility. And on there, I found my perfect body, the body I wanted. And it was a gorgeous body, and sure enough, it was right there on that vision board, woo! And it was surrounded in pink, and I put it in a frame, and I had it in my bathroom, and I looked at it all the time. It was just gorgeous. Well, about 5 years later, I'm in a beach or a swimsuit, a swimming pool or something, and I look down, and I have the swimming suit that was on the body. So the law worked. It gave me the swimsuit, but I still had it on my pleasingly plump body, which shows up from last week. You'll get the whole pleasingly plump later. So I got everything. I got what was in my consciousness, which was the whole thing. By the way, on that very same vision board, and I thought of this after the talk was over last service, and I will say this because, that's why I'm a little afraid of vision boards and why I go more for what I'm going to talk about later, which is experience, internal experience, instead of visioning things. I had that same vision board, that same picture up in my bathroom when I was in Salt Lake City, and I had started dating this man, and he had a young son, about 12, and he went into my bathroom, and he looked up, and he says, "Oh, that's my daddy," because I had put a couple together, and I put underneath, everlasting love or something, and sure enough, it looked just like Jack Lewis. I thought, now, if I hadn't been there, we may not have had that little blimp in my romantic development. So just careful. The law of attraction does work. So let's move on to the law of attention. Now, this is still the same law of cause and effect, but it's easier to break it down and see how you use it if you break it down. So there's attraction. What I'm visualizing, what I'm picturing will be drawn to me. But it will be in relationship to all of me. Then there's the law of attention. And the law of attention says whatever you give your attention to will increase. So it's very important to watch what you give your attention to. And so this, if you get nothing else out of this and you feel healthy, give your attention to your health. But if you're like a lot of people, we don't give our attention to our health until we're not healthy. But we should be giving our attention to our health. We should be giving our attention to what works. We should pay attention to all of our capabilities and our capacities and be grateful for them. And that's why many spiritual teachings said to be grateful and to write out your gratitude. Why? Because that gives you an opportunity to give attention to what's working, and what you give your attention to increases. How many of you, though, and this includes me, except I got over it, I've had to learn, how many of you start to get a symptom and you watch that symptom and you wait for the next little symptom to show up? Because you know it's on the way. You know if you get the scratchy throat, right behind it is going to be the runny nose, and you're waiting for it. And you know that behind the runny nose is going to be a hacking cough, and you're waiting for it. Brothers and sisters, there's going to be problems. Do you do that? I mean, no, you don't do that. How many of you know people that do that? Okay, so I say that because it's the law of attention. Now, here's what I do. I get symptoms, and yet I'm seldom sick. I seldom miss work. I think the worst thing that has happened to me is, well, I went through cancer and you guys didn't know. I mean, I do not follow that road. The worst thing that happens to me is because I sometimes will hurt my back, and then I have to do the same thing I'm going to tell you when I get the symptoms, which is I pay attention, I say, oh, there's the symptom, and then I put my attention on something else beside what's going to come next. I go, oh. And if I have to, I make myself take a nap. I do my prayer work and I sleep so that I am not waiting for the next thing to show up and go, yahoo, I'm here. I'm a little early. Can you take me now? I'm not sure that it's always going to work, but it works for me. So I tell you, it works for me. There's a woman who doesn't come here much anymore because she's so darn busy. And yet when she did come here, and you know, some of you know this story, so when she did come here, we had just moved onto this property. We definitely didn't have this building. But we actually, I remember it was about this time of year, and it was so beautiful, we would meet outside and where this building was, under trees. And she took her, what is now the equivalent of Beyond Limits, spiritual practice, and self-mastery. She took the three core classes, and yet she would hobble over to wherever she was because she had MS, which was really a terrible thing for a young 30-year-old who was on the Olympic bicycle team. Couldn't do any of that. And she took these classes and she decided to pay attention to what worked in her body, not what didn't work in her body. Because she said being around most people with a disease, especially a debilitating one, is that they talk about what's not working and then they wait for the next thing to fall apart. And she didn't do that. And she's not stupid. She knows she still has MS. And she'll email me sometimes and say, you know what, I have bad days. But I know it's only a day. It's not who I am. And so by putting her attention on more of what does work instead of what doesn't work, she now races in bicycle races. This is, you know, that's unusual, but I want to be unusual. I want to follow someone's example who's done this. Because if it works, it can probably work for a whole lot more people if we're willing to give it a try. And that's all it takes, is ask yourself, where's my attention? What am I giving my attention to? She actually then took empowerment group training from us so she could become a facilitator, because she's on, at least she was, on the Washington State Council for MS, the statewide group, and she taught other people to do what she did. That then they'd come together in small groups and talk about what was working, and what was working, and what was working. Boy, it's hard though, isn't it, sometimes? Because the mind, just like Alessandra, the mind can come up with all these things that you can't do. And who are you? And let's look at the facts. But when we were given dominion over our mind, and we have dominion over our world, our kingdom, and it's in our mind, we have the ability to say, yeah, but I'm going to put my attention here. Yeah, but I'm putting my attention here. So that's the law of attention. Now I want to talk about the thing that I love. I love this law, and it's the law of mental equivalence. And boy, it's working us all the time. And the way that I define mental equivalence is whatever is normal is yours. And whatever you're comfortable with, you will probably recreate. Or another way I phrase it is, how good can you stand it? Because we operate in our mental equivalence. What we believe is the equivalent of what kind of life we can have. We operate in this. And, you know, it's a nice place. We put up pictures, and we have a little settee, and you can't stretch out your legs, but who needs to do that anyway? So we're really comfortable. But it's confining. And what I love is that Alessandra let herself be motivated by something outside of her mental equivalent. Because when you start to go through this, it will become incredibly uncomfortable. If this is our comfort zone, that means you have to go through the comfort zone, and what do you go through? Discomfort. So you have to want something much bigger out there so you can find out how big you are. Otherwise, you stay here. And everyone will agree with you because you're going to have facts. You know what the wallpaper of this place is? Facts. Evidence. Nice evidence. Pictures of the past. Memories of your parents. All sorts of things. So you have to want to go through this to bust out of it. Alessandra gave a great example of her saying, you know, I want to go on this trip. And what she didn't say that I heard first service, and maybe she said it, but I heard it first service, is that in her family of origin, you always had what you need, but you're not supposed to need much. So the comfort zone was, I have what I need, but don't need much. So to need something that is not going to save your life or give you a job, that's crazy. So do you see what a comfort zone she has to move through or had to move through? My illustration happened just yesterday. I know, and I want to move back just for a second. Your mental equivalence is known more by how you feel and what you experience. It's a feeling state of rightness or wrongness. It's a feeling state of comfort or discomfort. It's a feeling state of power or giving up. It's an experience. Yesterday, I noticed that I was feeling poor. I guess that's a short word for it. I mean, I could give you a long description. But in this fall, a lot of stuff comes up that we have to pay for on the little ranchette, and because my husband's retired, he now looks around and sees things that we need for the ranchette, and it just looked like more was flowing out than flowing in. And we need to buy hay, and I'm thinking, okay, and then there's that's coming up. And then I had this mare, this gorgeous mare, who has never wanted to see the doctor much, and all of a sudden everything's going wrong with her. Everything. Every week, our veterinarian is coming out to visit Karma. And it's like, what? In fact, the last time on Friday, I called his office, his wife answered, and I said, you know what, I think Karma has a crush on Dr. Paul. Because she's sick again. In fact, actually, before I could even say that, she said, oh, what's she got this time? And well, she's sick again. This thing didn't clear up. And I'm thinking another farm call and a visit. And how many of you go there? I was feeling on Friday like I was being overtaken by more than I could handle. And then I realized that feeling was my now mental equivalent. I'd let a few bills build up, and it was creating a feeling in me that was supporting more of that experience. My consciousness of this is overwhelming was getting out of hand. So I changed my consciousness. It's not that we're not going to pay for things. We're still going to buy hay. But I will not succumb to the idea that these things can overwhelm me. And what's interesting is that I made that decision in the morning, and then I got a call from the vet that said, I don't need to come out there. Why don't you just pick up some medicine? Ka-ching. Things will, when I shifted, things began to shift. And I had this revelation for service that I had begun to believe that living on a ranchette is a burden. And if I believe it's a burden, it will become a burden. Now, the facts remain the same, but I don't want my mental equivalent of burden to create my future. I want my mental equivalent of, wow, this is heaven on earth, to create my future. Mental equivalent. Now, I mentioned Christmas. Alessandra went from 0 to Portugal in 4 months. So think about what you would like to have for Christmas. What would you like to be? What would you like to do? What would you like to have in 4 months? But make it something that will stretch you beyond your comfort zone. Because you know what you could be, do, and have. How many of you are smart enough to know what you could be, do, and have? Well, whatever you can be, do, and have is in your little circle here. Very cute. You get to add a new piece of furniture to the circle. What I would like you to think about is a be, do, and have that is outside your comfort zone. That you'll have to become more to have that, be that, or do that. So just take a moment, take a deep breath. Let the Holy Spirit speak to you, and the Holy Spirit is always the inner teacher. And when you have an idea of what you would like to accept for Christmas or Hanukkah, I'm not sure which comes first this year, but whatever comes first, raise your hand. When you have an idea of what you'd like to be, do, or have, raise your hand. Okay? So let's use the law of cause and effect to put that future in the pipeline, to let the law work through this. So if it's outside of your comfort zone, it will take a lot of attention to shift your subjective consciousness. But there is always a way to do that. The first way is I would like you to see you having, being, and doing the thing you want to have, do, or be. I want you to see yourself in it. Don't see yourself as a witness. I want you to see yourself being, doing, or having it. And you'll start to activate the law of attraction. So when you can see in your mind's eye yourself being, doing, or having, like I saw myself in that silly swimsuit. I just didn't see myself with that body. When you see yourself, raise your hand. It takes concentration sometimes, but anyone can do it. If anybody can do it, everyone can do it. Thank you. Now, we're going to use the law of attention to activate the law of cause and effect. And so I'm asking you to see yourself being, doing, or having that thing you want by Christmas. I would ask you to commit to yourself to see that every morning and every evening before you sleep. If you're willing to commit to that, to commit to holding this vision, raise your hand. Thank you. And now let's move into the last part, the most important part I want you to let the Holy Spirit move you ahead in time 4 months. And you're now sitting at the Christmas Eve service. It's the day before Christmas, and all through the house, all things are stirring, and much more than a mouse. For everyone is sitting in their present presence. So what I mean by that is, sit in this space. It's Christmas Eve, and you are what you want to be. You have what you want to have, and you're doing or have done what you made a commitment to on August 30th. Sit in answered prayer. This is building your mental equivalent. Sit in answered prayer. Feel what it feels like. Wiggle around in a little bit. Make it very, very true for yourself. And now you sit there while I pray. And I say, thank you, sweet Spirit, for bringing us here this day. To teach us to move beyond our limits. To teach us to move beyond our boundaries and borders of thought and consciousness. To move into the vast, greater yet to be that awaits not only ourselves, but all humanity. Oh, sweet Spirit, teach us the power of mind. Sweet Spirit, let us use the law for our blessing, so that we may know the law works and we can be of a benefit to all of the world, so that we can hold the consciousness of a world that works for everyone. Sweet Spirit, teach us the truth and the reality that mystics have taught throughout the ages. Teach us to use our mind intelligently for ourselves, for our family, for our friends, for our planet. Let us be guided every day into this greater yet to be. Thank you, Spirit. And so it is.